Welcome into the 15-minute drill with Jimmie Allen. We just did a video last night about Dylan Raiola and committing to Oregon and what all that entailed and why I thought he did it. Got a ton of positive feedback from the video, so I appreciate everybody that weighed in and gave us your thoughts. So I decided to start a YouTube channel. So if you're watching for the first time or just joining, go ahead and like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. And I want to give my thoughts tonight on Mike Eckler and the coaching situation and how it reflects on Nebraska. And it kind of piggybacks off the conversation we were having last night compared to the trajectory of Nebraska and the trajectory of Matt Rhule and where year four is really heading in the direction that it's going in. So tonight in the 15-minute drill, let's break down about what this looks like for Nebraska if Mike Eckler chooses not to come back. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, USC and Lincoln Riley is putting a pretty hard full court press on Mike Eckler to get him to come be the special teams coach and possibly a linebackers coach for that defense. And people that don't know, Mike Eckler, before he came back this time to Nebraska, was a assistant linebacker coach under Bo Pelini previously. And obviously, we got into a lot of what Dylan's decision meant for Dylan last night going to Oregon. I don't think we really talked much about what it means for Nebraska, and we talked about Dylan being a pillar of the recruiting cycle for Matt Rhule and his coaching staff going previously, and what it meant to get big time recruits to come in to play alongside a 5-star quarterback. Now, obviously, a special teams coordinator is not going to have that level of recruiting power or maybe even effect on whether a player chooses to come to Nebraska, especially in the NIL era where it's all about playing time and money, seemingly. But you got to remember how bad the first 2 years of special teams under Matt Rhule was before Mike Eckler was brought in. And before we get into all that, I want to talk about why Mike Eckler ended up coming here and the things that surrounded him because and I want to preface this with saying this is probably a very minuscule reason for a couple of things, but I think back to the episode of Bussin' with the Boys with Will Compton and the guys just going back, and Taylor Lewan going back and forth with Matt Rhule and Will Compton just jokingly saying, "How do you feel about 5-star quarterbacks from Arizona?" Because obviously, Dylan Raiola was in Chandler, Arizona at the time, and Matt Rhule doing recruiting violations couldn't talk about Dylan Raiola, and and I don't want to implement the fact that I think that Will Compton is the reason that Dylan Raiola is here, but Will Compton's a lot of the reason that Mike Eckler ended up coming back to Nebraska. Will being able to make the connection there because Will Compton was a linebacker at Nebraska while Mike Eckler was the linebackers coach. And Will Compton has raved about Mike Eckler. And listen, he's got all the reasons. And we saw how quickly, in just 1 year's time, Nebraska's special teams turned around from one of the worst units in the country. I mean, a unit that was really a weekly joke about how it was going to go wrong this week to where this year it was more what can the special teams unit help us to do to win football games? And you saw it with kick returns and the way that they were able to just bring an energy, which was a direct reflection of their special teams coordinator. And Nebraska goes from being 110th 2 years ago to 46 this year. That's obviously a massive jump in just one season. And you had guys like Ja'Cory Barney talking about wanting to lead the nation in punt return yards. Now, obviously, that didn't happen, but setting goals like that and expecting to be able to achieve them because of the guy that's in charge of that unit. And there's obviously been a lot of shortcomings in the first 3 seasons under Matt Rhule: 5-7, 7-6, 7-6, and then you take that facet of the game and that improved, and what that could mean for year four if you could build off that or stack, seasons where you're just continuing to improve, and you had the addition of Kyle Cunanan and obviously what he brought to the game, and John Hole being able to find a way to keep the ball in bounds after the first mishap of the season and not really letting things like that affect us. And it couldn't have hurt to have a guy like Mike Eckler in that defensive room if and when needed. Obviously, he helped out with the bowl game, and the bowl game went the way it did for a lot of reasons. But I want to talk about the reasons that Mike Eckler left the first time and what could be stewing this time. Now, Mike Eckler was obviously working under Bo Pelini previously, and there were several interactions between Bo and Mike Eckler on the sideline that didn't look friendly. But I mean, that was just Bo Pelini, right? I mean, you could say that there was the Taylor Martinez incident, there was the Kenny Bell incident, there was fill in the blank incident with a countless number of officials. Boepling just runs really hot, and that can wear on people in a work environment. And Mike Eckler chose to leave to go to Indiana in 2010, or excuse me, 2012. This is not Kurt Signetti's Indiana, so I mean, it was definitely a step down. But obviously, he took his own path and had a really successful coaching career that took him to places like USC the first time, which we're obviously talking about here, but stops in Chapel Hill and stops most recently in Tennessee and at Georgia before that. So he got a ton of experience along the way, a ton of Power Four experience, and obviously back then Power Five. But he's a guy that had a ton of success, a top 10 unit special team, top 10 special teams unit in the country at Tennessee previously, and obviously top 50 at Nebraska in year one. And who knows what it could have been after that, because after spending just 3 years at Tennessee, he was able to make that a top 10 unit. So I don't want to say that he could for sure do that at Nebraska, but there's, there's a ton of proof in the pudding that he possibly could have. And he hasn't left yet, and Matt Rhule has obviously kind of been doing the media tour about trying to keep Mike Eckler and Lincoln and the importance of him. But I want to take you back to specifically what Matt Rhule talked about, and this could be nothing. I want to point that out, that this could mean absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things, or it could be the most important cog of what we're talking about here. Is there was that incident where Matt Rhule was at the podium and he talked about how hyped Mike Eckler was during a couple of the games this year. And there was one instance where Eck was just pumped up and he ended up punching Matt Rhule, and Matt Rhule's like, "Hey man, just get away from me." We've all worked with people that it's tough to work in a room with for 8 hours a day, or be on the same shift with, because their personality can just be a bit much sometimes. And listen, Mike Eckler is unapologetically Mike Eckler. I mean, who you see him as on game days is probably even ramped up even more during practice, because he gets the best out of his unit. And there just seems to be something about this coach that is really that seems to really resonate with players, that may be tough to be to deal with in coaching meetings, because listen, if you're happy all the time and you bring energy all the time, that's great, but it might be tough to deal with in certain situations. And it specifically in that one press conference where Matt Rhule said, "Hey, sometimes I just got to tell Eckler to get away from me," just because he does seem to be a bit much from a personality standpoint, but the results can't be argued. And I think that's a lot of the reason why you're seeing Matt Rhule go on different podcasts and different radio shows. And he was on the CBS Sports Network last night, just talking about the importance of Mike Eckler and what he meant to this team. But I mean, if you're Mike Eckler, you're also like, "Hey, my head coach told me he needs me to get away from him to be able to deal with me at times." And I'm certain that Lincoln Riley and the folks out at USC are probably offering a ton of money for Mike Eckler's services. And take you back to the first 6 games of the season. Think post the Michigan game where Matt Rhule is talking about the Penn State stuff and James Franklin being fired, and talk about, hey, this is kind of the negative side to winning. And obviously didn't happen a ton after that, but this is the negative side to turning around your special teams unit in less than 12 months, from a you can't convert an extra point to a top 50 unit, is people are going to want that type of results at their program as well. And listen, Lincoln Riley's had a ton of success. Obviously, hasn't won a national championship yet, but there was a lot of people that thought this might be his last year at USC because things weren't going well. Obviously, this year they were able to turn that around to some degree. Not the success that the folks out in California want them to, or what Lincoln Riley expects, but they're also looking for a way to take that next step forward. And if Mike Eckler can do it in Nebraska, the thought process is he's probably going to be able to do it at USC as well. I don't think the vibes around the situation are good. I'll tell you that much. It kind of feels like Mike Eckler is obviously entertaining the idea of leaving. But I want to say that it's important to remember that he chose to come back to Nebraska. And yes, there's the Will Compton of it all, but I know Will's got a lot more YouTube followers than I do, but I can't imagine that's the only reason. It seemed like Mike Eckler really loved this place the first time he's here. He seemed to thoroughly enjoy it this season, and they had success, right? I mean, the special teams unit specifically, and yeah, Nebraska got to a bowl game and technically had a winning season. Had a lot more success in the first half of it too. But Mike Eckler seems like the type of guy. If you ever hear him talk, he enjoys the process and seems very routine oriented. So for him to go to back to back places in to leave somewhere and go somewhere else in 2 consecutive years is not something he's done since 2019, 2020. And I know that's really recent since he went from Kansas to North Texas, but there was a coaching change there, and that was more out of a necessity. But I would be really surprised if Mike Eckler's first choice would be to leave somewhere after just one season. And it really seems like he liked the Ja'Cory Barneys, the Kyle Kunanans of the world. And obviously, you got to get both, you got to get Ja'Cory Barney to stay. Kyle Kananon's a sophomore, so I mean, in theory, he's coming back for another season, and I know Ja'Cory Barney hasn't declared for the transfer portal yet, or even flirted with that. He has till Friday to do so, but on paper, the team that would be the most likely to pull him away is his hometown team in Miami, and they're playing for a national championship on Monday. So I mean, it's gonna be interesting because Ja'Cory Barney's kind of been Matt Rhule's guy. I know Ja'Cory's been really linked to Dylan Raiola, and that kind of felt like a marriage at the beginning. But I don't know how many guys. I don't know if there's anybody that Matt Rhule has specifically brought up in press conferences or raved about more than Ja'Cory Barney. Now he had a really good first half of the season as well, and that kind of tapered off. And the quarterback situation can absolutely be a factor in that. But I don't know if there's anybody on this team currently that fits what Dana Holgerson wants to do with the mesh concept, that motion to the side and let them play out in space more than Ja'Cory Barney. I mean, specifically, I think if Ja'Cory Barney is back next year, that's got to be an absolute staple of this offense. And does that take away from his ability to play special teams? Who knows? I don't think that'd be the case. And he clearly loved doing it. And Matt Rhule seemed pretty keen on the ability or the idea of him having the ability to do so. So you throw all of that in the equation, and then you talk about guys like Kenneth Williams, who was clearly a spark this season, and they absolutely loved and ended up putting on scholarship because of his kick return ability that you feel like could help Nebraska in several different ways next year. And there might be something to Ja'Cory Barney wanting to come back based on the way the rest of the wide receiver room decides to do as well. I mean, Isaiah Hunter's still technically on campus, and I think he's got the potential to be a big time number one wide receiver in the Big Ten next season. They've obviously added a guy in Quasi Gilmore from UCLA to the equation too, and that's more about the wide receiver, and we can get that into a different video. But it just kind of feels like if Mike Eckler's gone, that hurts your chances of keeping Ja'Cory Barney around because there wasn't too many times where you saw Ja'Cory at a press conference or at the podium this year where he didn't talk about or rave about Mike Eckler and being a part of that special teams unit. I mean, there was entire video packages on certain game days of what Ja'Cory Barney was doing to hype up the special teams unit specifically before the game. And that feels like a direct correlation to or reflection on the energy that Mike Eckler brings to that room as well. And I started this video saying that we want to talk about how this looks if Mike Eckler does choose to leave. I mean, the realization of what you would have is you would have the five-star quarterback that you kind of hung the pellet on the wall for and said, this is the guy that we're going to build the program around. And it was a big deal, and it was a very big deal to get Dylan Raiola in the time you got him, but he's gone. And then you couldn't figure out special teams for 2 years. You had to bring Mike Eckler in. He comes in and he seemingly fixes it like that. And I know that's minimalizing the efforts of what it actually took to get that unit turned around, but it felt like his communication style and the way he related to players was a big chunk of Mike Eckler being able to turn around the special teams unit. And you throw that influx of the talent of a Ja'Cory Barney or Kenneth Williams, and obviously some other guys being able to block for them, and Kyle Kunanen being brought in to be his kicker. And we haven't even brought up Archie Wilson yet, who I think has got a very, very bright future. And we didn't even, I don't feel there's so much talk about him being able to run and throw this season, and we didn't see it once. So that just feels like something that is directly tied to Mike Eckler. So if you lose that five-star quarterback and then you lose the guy who essentially turned around your worst unit of your three main units and was able to do it in a very timely fashion. Both of those guys leave. To me, that looks like a really bad reflection on Matt Rhule and could hurt this recruiting cycle, not just this recruiting cycle, but recruiting cycles going forward. I think it is imperative that you sign Mike Eckler to a multi-year extension, let alone not letting him walk out the door this year. And I would give him whatever he wants because I think he's a hell of a coach and I think he's a fantastic human being. And there's a lot hinging on him staying around. We appreciate you sticking around. If you were able to enjoy this video, make sure you give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Check out the 15-minute drill nightly. I've been your host, Jimmie Allen. We hope you come back next time. Thanks for joining. Thanks for liking and subscribing. We'll see you on the flip side.